Hello children, I hope you're taking good care of yourself. I hope that the examination is nearing, so you might be busy with the preparation of the examination. So I've come today keeping the examination in mind with this particular lesson which is going to help you in your examination, and this is from book 3 of UASST for grade 7, lesson number 8, Russia, USSR and the Cold War. So without wasting much of the time, let's get started. These are the main contents of the lesson. Please go through. It has the lesson objectives, the Russian timeline, demography, natural resources and political system, the USSR, satellite states and disbandment of USSR, USSR and Central Asia and Cold War. So let us see the learning objectives. To know about the culture, history and politics of Russia, to understand the dynamics of USSR and Cold War. The UAE link. UAE was formed in 1971 by the unification of various emirates. The CC link. It is linked with political science. The topic deals with the disbandment, how USSR was divided or split up. Then the civil war and formation of Russia. So it acquaints the readers about the kind of government that Russia has. This is the warm-up question from the textbook. Please go through. Please subscribe to my channel. So let me just proceed further. So let us see the Russian timeline. Russia is a North Asian country at the foot of Eastern Europe, located north of China and Central Asia. Russia borders the Arctic Ocean and extends from Georgia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, Belarus, Finland, Estonia, and Latvia to the North Pacific Ocean. So I put up a map over here so that you can understand the proper location and the neighboring countries, the oceans, and how it is surrounded by various physical factors. All that you will come to know by looking at the map. Now let us see the timeline in detail. In 862 CE, that is the Christian era, Vikings established the Rus state with immigrants from Scandinavia. In the year 988, the Byzantine Empire conquered the area and introduced Christianity. Moscow, Russia's capital and one of its largest cities, was ruled by the Mongols from the 13th to the 15th century. So this is the third detailed timeline. The fourth part of the timeline is by the 17th century, the Romanov dynasty took over and spread the borders across Central Asia and eastward towards the Pacific Ocean, laying the geographic foundation for the Russian Empire. So by this you can come to know that the Romanov dynasty was ruling in the 17th century and how they started spreading themselves in Central Asia. Then in 1917, the Romanov dynasty was overthrown. This was the time of the First World War. The Russian army was busy fighting the war, and during that time they get the information that back home in Russia there is an outbreak of Russian Revolution. So the military had to withdraw, and in 1917, at that very moment, Russia withdrew from the First World War. A new form of government called as communism was introduced after the removal of the Romanov dynasty. So the kingship came to an end, and then you had the introduction of this particular new government, which was a communist government under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, and Russia soon became known as USSR, or United Soviet Socialist Republic. So let us see the demography. Russia is a very large and diverse country with a population of over 141 million people. When I say diverse, that means there's so much of variety, which you can see in this slide. Over 200 ethnic groups live in Russia, including the Tatar, Ukrainian, Bashkir, Chuvash, Chechen, and others, making up the majorities. So these people are in majorities, while the other ethnic groups are in minorities. Russian is the official language, followed by Tatar and Chechen. However, due to the large amount of diverse ethnic groups, many other languages are widely spoken in regions. Russian Orthodox Christianity makes up about 20% of the population's religious beliefs. That means the majority of the people over there are Christians, 20%, followed by Islam, that is less than 20%, and other forms of Christianity. Although those religions make up the majority, the Russian state also recognizes Judaism, Buddhism, and many other traditional religions. Although Russia is an extremely large country, most of its population is concentrated. That means it is accumulated in the westernmost areas, with smaller pockets of people living in scattered areas throughout the other Russian territorial regions. So you find a dense population in the western region of Russia, but that doesn't mean that the people do not live at all in the other places. In the other places, there's a scattered or a thin population. Russia's major cities are Moscow with a population of roughly 12 million, St. Petersburg with a population of 5 million, and then there are so many names of the cities mentioned over here with their population. Now let us see the natural resources and political system over here. Natural resources in Russia include the platinum, gold, diamonds, iron ore, titanium, copper, and phosphate. So these are the important minerals which you find over there. Russia is described as semi-presidential federation, which means that the president works alongside the prime minister and a cabinet. So it's not purely a communist nation, but it has got a mixed a kind of governance wherein there is some kind of democracy involved in this region. The current president of Russia is Vladimir Putin, who has served as both the second and the fourth president, preceded by Boris Yeltsin. So Boris Yeltsin was the first president, second president was Vladimir Putin, third was Dmitry Medvedev, then the fourth one again, the current one is Vladimir Putin. Before the current governmental system, Russia underwent numerous political systems which have had a significant impact on the fabric of the country. Obviously, the political system plays a very important role in the life of the people. That is the social life, the political life, the economy of the country. All that is affected, or all that has got a direct bearing if you have the political system of the country in such a manner. Besides that, I have added activity 1 also. Please go through. See the USSR. The USSR is an acronym, that is, it is a short form for the main word or for the main um, name, that is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. So this is the full form. This massive federalist socialist state located in what is now called as, or the present day, Russia, Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. Such a huge big region at one time comprised of USSR. This state existed from 1922 to 1991 and was considered the largest country in the world, occupying roughly one-sixth of the Earth's surface. That means out of the 10, out of 10, that means out of 100, 60%. Okay, founded by Vladimir Lenin, when the Russian provisional government was overthrown, the Soviet Union promoted the social ownership of the production, distribution, and exchange of the country's resources. So this country of USSR was founded by Lenin. He was also called as father of USSR. And when this was overthrown, the Soviet Union, they promoted communism in their country. That means all the factors of production should be owned collectively by the community or by the people. In other words, it is public sector, purely a public sector. USSR became known as the first socialist country with a planned transition into a socialist society. After World War II, the USSR began to gain power and expand further, eventually encompassing. It went further, taking over the so many regions. So none of the Eastern European countries had so much of power and so much of territorial expansion the way USSR had. Now the satellite states and disbandment of USSR. So what exactly is a satellite state? We will see. And how did USSR became completely disintegrated? Although Soviet ideology spread extensively throughout the region, many countries that is absorbed became known as satellite states, which were able to keep their independence but were controlled by Soviet Union. That means that the real remote control was in the hands of Soviet Union. They had their independence, but they couldn't do anything substantial without the nod of Soviet Union. The satellite states included Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, East Germany, Bulgaria, and Romania. So these were the satellite states. You have to remember the names of these states or the countries. By the 1980s, the USSR's economy began to suffer, and many of the countries in the Union started to seek full independence. A political leader named Mikhail Gorbachev became the Soviet Union's last head of the state and attempted to revive the economy. Mikhail Gorbachev, as far as I know, he was a well-known economist. So he tried to bring back the glory of USSR by reviving the economy, by making it more stronger, or it, I should say, more stable. While his efforts were intended to make improvements, many members of the USSR became unhappy with the socialist styled government. So many members of the of that cabinet did not like this idea of USSR being a communist nation, and USSR was officially disbanded. That means it was disintegrated, split into many tits and bits in 1991. After the collapse of Soviet Union, Boris Yeltsin became the first president of Russian state as it transitioned from socialism. So as it slowly underwent a change. Transition is a change. So from complete purely socialism or communism, in other words, slowly and steadily then it started taking up more of democracy in their country. The activity 2 from the textbook, please go through. Now let us see USSR and Central Asia. Before Central Asia developed into distinct countries, so they became five big countries after it got disbanded from USSR. The Russian Empire began to gain influence and eventual dominance over the region in the 18th century. By 1847, Russia invaded the present-day Kazakh steppe area and had a strong military presence that spread towards the border of the present-day Kyrgyzstan. So slowly and steadily in the 18th century, they started the expansion. So Kazakhstan's steppe region, steppes are the grasslands. So when we have the grasslands in the tropical regions, those are called as savanna grasslands. But those which are in the temperate regions, so those temperate grasslands are called as steppes. Now over here, Russia slowly and steadily started extending themselves or expanding themselves, and they had taken the region of Kazakhstan's grasslands and then the region they came right up till Kyrgyzstan. This Russian dominance eventually spread throughout the entire central region as a way to halt British influence in the area, because they had the fear that if they leave it, then the Britishers will have a lot of influence in so many countries. In that same manner, they will come and they will influence Central Asia also. So they felt threatened. That's the reason they took over the entire region of Central Asia slowly and steadily. During a series of conflicts known as the Great Game, Russia and Great Britain competed for dominance in the area, which resulted in Britain's East India Company gaining control over the Indian subcontinent, whereas Russia controlling the Central Asia. So these were the imperialist nations who were trying to get more and more countries under their control and to make those countries their colonies. So the Indian subcontinental region was completely under the dominance of the Britishers, whereas Central Asia came under the dominance of Russia. The creation of Soviet Union had a significant impact on Central Asia. After coming into power, the Central Asia was divided into ethnically based republics. This division was a process called as National Territorial Delimitation (NDT). This not only created borders throughout Central Asia, it also separated the countries into distinct groups under USSR. So this was the thing which was actually, what should I say, a positive or a negative point you can see. Central Asia was one huge big chunk, and then that chunk slowly and steadily got disintegrated, and how the divisions came over. So when they won independence, it had become very easy for them, that they knew that this is an ethnic group in which we are residing. So let us call it as Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and so on. So it is Russia or the USSR who sowed the seeds of such kind of division. Then it also created separate countries and into the distinct groups. After years of subjugation, after the years of slavery, Central Asian countries began to achieve their own independence and are all the sovereign nations, or they are all the countries which are said to be the republics in the present day. That means they are not at all under the domination of USSR anymore. Activity 3 from the textbook, please go through. Let us see the Cold War. The Cold War was characterized as a conflict between the Western European government ideology and Eastern European socialist government ideology that lasted from 1945 to 1991. So this was the war which was not fought with weapons, but it was the war of ideologies and how the ideologies clashed. And when there were clashes of ideologies, because Western European countries, they believed more in democracy, whereas the Eastern countries were too much influenced by communism or socialism. So at that time, USSR and USA were competing to get that number one position, but they had different leadership ideas. They wanted complete, USSR wanted complete socialism, and it should be accepted by more and more countries of the world, whereas USA wanted the countries to become democratic. So that was the war for number one position. This clash between these ideologies began as a way to slow the spread of communism throughout the world. Though neither country, that is, neither of them, was successful, they did not declare a war on each other. A series of proxy wars took place in which other allied countries would fight each other while being supported by either USSR or USA. So it was like two huge big groups being made. One side was USSR and so many countries along with it. The other side was USA and with so many other countries who believed in democratic ideology. And there were clashes, but these two countries, USSR and USA, did not fight face to face, but they were supporting the countries in their groups. So those group countries were fighting with each other. It was like that. Since the two countries never engaged in a battle with each other, the term is Cold War was used to describe the conflict between these two nations. One way that the two countries fought in the Cold War was through the use of influence. So they tried to influence the other small nations to take up their ideology. Events such as the race to space, nuclear arms race became competitions for the demonstration of power and influence. So a race to space, that means how much do we have the space expeditions in 5 years, in 3 years. So that was the race of space, wherein Russia and USSR were, I'm sorry, USSR and USA were trying to compete with each other. Besides that, there was a accumulation and invention of more and more, you can say, harmful weapons, destructive weapons. So that was another kind of, so these were the things which were the components of the Cold War. In these two races, both the superpowers competed with each other to show their technological and military power. As both the countries began to develop nuclear weapons, the spread of their different forms of ideology throughout the world was viewed as a mutual threat, and a fight to slow the spread became an important issue on both the sides. So they felt at one point of time that there might be a war, actual war taking place between two of them. But actually, the world had seen two world wars, and they had seen these two world wars in the 19th century itself. So they were trying to, just avoid the war. Due to the decline of Soviet Union and the subsequent independence of its member states, the idea of communist superpower began to fade. So USSR was completely disintegrated, and so the Cold War came to an end in 1991 with the election of Boris Yeltsin. This is activity 4 from the textbook. Please go through. It's an application based question. What did you understand and how about the ideologies? So I have written it in my own words what I could understand. You can still add some more points of your own.
So thank you so much for watching my channel on SST, and just signing off with a humble request to please subscribe if you haven't subscribed as yet. Press the bell icon for the notification of my latest videos. Share it with your friends, relatives and acquaintances so that they can get benefited by my videos. See you next time with my new video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.